Stevie Wonder, Overjoyed. So I want to talk to you this morning about creating a way of being that will allow us to connect more authentically as people inside and outside of this building. This sermon is about deepening relationships, going beyond our stereotypes, our assumptions. This message is about creating intentional acts of inclusion and not, subtle acts of exclusion. My goal is for you to be inspired enough to stay around for our after hour where we will talk about subtle acts of exclusion and how people in their experience of this congregation have felt excluded. How many of you were at the middle hour? So some of what I'm going to say to you is going to be familiar, but stick with me. Now, I want to say I'm no expert on this. I've made some of these mistakes over my 20-plus years as a UU. So I would say that I'm just like a couple chapters ahead of you. But what I am going to share is from my heart. What I believe we must all do to manifest our greatness as a people. This is not just about church work. It's about manifesting your greatness as a human being. And a lot of what I'm sharing has come from the Unitarian congregation, Unitarian Versus congregation in Atlanta, the other UUCA. And of course, I want to thank our membership coordinator, Laura Schrank, who provided this video to me, and also a PowerPoint. You all saw some of that PowerPoint at the middle hour. I just think she's doing such an awesome job. Thank you, Laura.
Hello, this is Andy. How may I help you?
So how can I entice you to hang around when I know there's a football game at 3 o'clock? Well,
Okay,
first it will end at 2:30.
That's okay. I'll be able to find it. Just
2:30. Yeah. So I think it starts with why you come to church.
Okay, sure.
I like to go to the origins of things. Why do people come to church? Why do people come to this church? Why do you come to this congregation? Now, on our wellness care team, we have, in our training, we have something that we review called life stressors. We have everybody look at it, we talk about it as some of the reasons why people show up at our doors. And some of these things are recent death of a loved one, separation, divorce, a loss of a job, becoming a new parent, a recent diagnosis or illness, a loss of a friend, a feeling of being alienated, and more. So people bring their pain to us when they come, their joys too. But we all must be sensitive to the fact that when we meet and engage with new people and with people that we know, people are bringing this with them. So creating a culture of connection first begins with being more empathic. People come because they are feeling isolated. They want somewhere to raise their children and their voice in a community that shares their values. They come because they're seeking a progressive religion that is pluralistic. The minister in the Atlanta congregation, Taryn Strauss, which it's so funny because Taryn's sister was here this morning. And I had no idea I was going to be talking about Taryn Strauss, the minister in Atlanta. She had no idea. I didn't know she was going to be here. And of course, her mother is a longtime friend of myself and Reverend Fred. She's our colleague and been in our support group for years. And there she comes up to me and say, "Hi, I'm the sister. I'm the older sister." And I'm just like, whoa. She said, "Thanks for giving my sister a shout out." So here's what her sister said, which I think is so significant. She said, "We don't save souls, but we do save lives." I really like that. We don't save souls, but we do save lives. We want people to feel seen and cherished for who they are. We want people to know that their life is worth living, that there is hope, that their lives are worth saving and savoring. Saving and savoring. So she says we must think about our liturgy, how we organize our services, our worship in general, our music, the pictures on our walls, our accessibility in our building, and the words we say to those coming through our doors. She says, when people cross the threshold of our doors, there is no more they, only we. And this aligns so well with what we're trying to create here at UUCA, what we call the Be Loved community. You are loved. We accept you with all of your fabulousness and all of your foibles. The task then is to build the infrastructure that reflects this reality. And a big part of that infrastructure is the words we use to welcome people. I've been at UU for a while now, and I've experienced some off-putting things. I've said a few too. And for example, and this happened in a UU church. I'm not going to name names. But a person of color, a black person, was asked, this is what was said to a black person: welcome. Do you know Joe in our congregation who's also black? Why would they? But I get it, right? In your nervousness and your excitement to talk to someone new, you just, you make assumptions, and you know what they say about assumptions. And the key is to take a breath before you speak. Slow down, take a breath. Or someone's late, and they're told, well, since you're late, there are not very many seats left for you. Now, how outrageous is that? But it happens. And by the way, this is why we went back to 2 services. Trust me, I did not want 2 services. I like the big crowd. I like the sound of a full room. I protested longer than anybody, but the membership coordinator was very persuasive. We want people to feel spatially welcome. And if 70% of the seats are taken, the studies show people feel less welcome. So being radically welcoming means it may cause you some discomfort, especially if you enjoy one service, but it is comforting to those who might come and feel isolated or jammed in. And we also added this Peace Center for our children and adults. You saw how active it was this morning. I told her, we were doing this at our church, and she said, oh, that'll never work. I didn't even know how to respond. I just looked at her like, what? But being radically welcoming means we try new things. And we all have different ways of being together. This is spaces for adults and children, because some people it's hard to sit through an hour without wiggling. So we're trying it. Anyway, I was talking about the things people say. And this is one that may not sound that offensive, but it can be. Like, I haven't seen you here before. Are you new? Or, hey, I don't recognize you. And so these gaffes can be avoided by simply saying, hello, I'm glad you're here today. Have we met before? Hello? Welcome. I'm glad you're here today. Have we met before? Welcome. I'm glad you're here today. Have we met before? No, we haven't. Yeah, I love that Unitarian Universalists are curious people, but I don't like when our curiosity leads to sort of loose words and we inadvertently offend. Intent and impact. Intent good, impact not so much. That is why the back door of a lot of churches and Unitarian Universalist churches across the country have for years been, the back door has been wide open. Now, what does that mean? That means the people come in the front door and they head right out the back door. So if we just kept the people that came in our doors over the years, although there's natural attrition, we would be growing, not just, we are a growing church, but as a faith, we would be growing. And Unitarian Universalists have been 150,000 and about 50,000 kids for decades. Like, we haven't really shrunk, but we haven't grown either. And I don't even know how to respond to that. What does that even mean? I don't know. But it means we're doing just enough to survive. Then you look at this article that came out this week about the nuns. There's been lots of articles. They're 20% now of the American population. Nuns, people who describe themselves as atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular, maybe spiritual, not religious. And they're not going to church. 20% of the population. They share many of our values. I think like this place should be busting at the seams. And we're doing great, don't get me wrong. But I think in part are the visible and some invisible barriers. And the visible ones, right? The natural assumptions that we sometimes make about what a Unitarian Universalist looks and smells like. We're all guilty there. We have to let go of that and accept that people come for countless reasons. They come from all shapes, sizes, colors, socioeconomics, education levels, sexual orientations. And we meet them where they are with curiosity and empathy. Creating a culture of connection means we intentionally invest our energy into knowing one another, and we learn to do less harm in our interactions, learning more about our flaws in communication and infrastructure, and correct them and try again. And like I said, I'm no expert, I'm guilty. I've said to newcomers more than I can count, "Are you new here?" I thought it was a good one until, I learned otherwise. It doesn't sound offensive, but it can be if a person coming is feeling isolated. That's the empathy I'm talking about. And I cringe thinking about how many people I may have repelled. However, I forgive myself. I learn more. I move forward. That's what we must all do. The purpose of church to me is quite simple. We help people lead bold, compassionate lives inside and outside our doors. We're here for people to give back to this community and the communities they serve. We help people feel a sense of belonging, a place where people feel a deep sense of purpose, a place to feel deep connection and love. It's not complicated to me. And in the 21st century, this time where the religious landscape is being remade, and some congregations will not survive, but the ones that will survive, I believe, will become masters at welcoming and connecting, which includes anti-racism, anti-oppression work. That's a part of that welcoming. The biggest thing we have to do if we want a growing and thriving congregation is learning how to meet, greet, and seat. Meet, greet, seat. We have to learn how to greet so well that people want to make these meaningful connections with us when they see us, when we meet them with warmth and curiosity. We want to be able to seat so well that we are conscious and think about where we're sitting and how we might not be welcoming with the seat that we've chosen. Maybe I move in a little bit. Maybe I move out a little bit. We think about that thing. And then meet. Did I say meet first? That was greet. Greet, meet, seat. And we want to meet people before and after the service in ways that are authentic but respectful. At UUCA, you know, we've seen over 100 new people in the last 2 years. 100 new people. That's great growth. And I'm proud of it. It means our religion is relevant. It means what we're doing is real. It's working. People are finding connection. And I want to do more of that. I want to become a leader in that. I want us to lead the way in our faith in meeting, in greeting, meeting, and seating. And we can do that if we each take up the challenge. And it really just starts with one. I want to tell you a story as I close. And this story comes from the New Testament. And it's often told literally, but, you know, like an Aesop fable, it's really the moral of the story. And there's a moral here if you listen for it and read for it. This story takes an interesting spin and changes the perspective a bit. It's about being fair and equitable, which is our theme this month. And the story is about the miracle of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Again, I don't believe it literally. I believe in the moral of the story. So I want to share the story. In this narrative, 5,000 people are hungry and asking for food. And they asked Jesus to feed them. And one of Jesus' followers, named Philip, he said to him, "How can we feed all of these people? It will take a year's wages to feed them." Then a little boy came forward who had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And he gave them to Jesus as an offering. And then Jesus told the people to sit down on the grass. He told 5,000 people to sit down. Can you imagine? 5,000 people, sit down. Then he took the 2 loaves and 2 fish the little boy gave him. He said a prayer, gave thanks, then started distributing the bits of food. And somehow the bits became a bunch. And the multitude was fed. And there was so much food that there were leftovers that he told his followers, pick up the leftovers. We're going to eat this later. And a miracle happened. End of story. Now, most people will read this and say, that's made up. Nobody, you can't do that. But there really is a miracle here if you look deeper. It's not about the hocus pocus. It's about welcoming and connecting. As I've been told this story, the real magic and the miracle is that little boy. Jesus took the food from this little boy who probably all he had. He offered it, gave it as an offering to Jesus. Then after that, Jesus says a prayer. Maybe he gave thanks for this, generous little boy. And then he prayed for the food and gave thanks for the food, and afterwards started breaking off bits of food, sharing with those closest to him. And remember, all these people are sitting down, so everybody's paying attention. And afterward, people started feeling guilty. They had seen the little boy give what he had, and they started feeling like maybe they were being stingy. And so they ended up pulling out bread and meats out of their cloaks because, as I've heard the story, they were hiding it because they were preparing for the Jewish Passover festival, which was upcoming. So they decided to become more welcoming. They started to share the food with others around them. They decided not to hoard. And that's what we're trying to do here, not to hoard over our love, but to share it with others, to widen the circle. And everything I've read about the laws of attraction and laws of reciprocity, the law of entrainment, they all show that you become something and it becomes you. As you become something, it becomes you. And it spreads, it gets sticky and is duplicated as you become more welcoming. As an individual, the church becomes more welcoming. It's a personal challenge. Others, all of a sudden, are joining in the feast, even if it's a little bit, if it just starts with you. When you create a culture of inclusion, you're saying, I'm going to start something good. And it will. It will. We're creating something to make space for others that says there is more than enough space. There's more than enough space if we're all willing to share. As my colleague, Reverend Mark Beltini, said so well, for religion to be significant, it has to provide more than the support, the comforts of community. It also has to provide opportunities for deepening, for what I call spiritual growth, and for the casting down of false images and stereotypes which hurt us all. A good religion has to open us to the real diversity of our modern world. And for our work as liberal religious people, it's not to be competitive with others and to find ways to supersede others, but rather to find ways to supersede ourselves, to grow beyond our limitations and our constrictive boundaries, each and every one of us. For you see, diversity must not end up being some sort of feel-good slogan, a word we keep in our back pockets to feel like we're broad-minded. Diversity is a gift, but it cannot be a gift unless it is received. It is only received when there are hands and hearts open enough to receive it, and the opening of fists into welcoming hands and welcoming hearts is our spiritual work. Glory be, may it be so. Amen.